Lakeland PBS presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Production funding of Common Ground is made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Welcome to Common Ground. I'm producer-director Scott Knudsen. In this season 11 finale, we join fashion designer Delana White and her company, IAmAnishinaabe.
My name is Delina White. I am a Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe and Minnesota Chippewa tribe member. I am a native apparel fashion designer, jewelry maker, and beadwork artist. My company is called IAmAnishinaabe. I make traditional Native American style clothing in a contemporary format. I think people think of fashion as an elite or luxury item, but actually it is absolutely necessary, since every morning we get up and we have to make a decision about what we're going to wear that day. And what you decide to wear says a lot about your hopes for the future, your message about what you want to send to others about yourself, and maybe some of the causes or issues that you want to bring light or awareness to. And as IAmAnishinaabe and a Native person, we try to show our pride in our culture. So in 2015, I was awarded a major grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, and that was the start of the IAmAnishinaabe brand company. I had requested the money to do a 5 prestigious gallery art show, fashion show called the Great Lakes Woodland Skirts Project. And it was one project that included my daughters, Lavender Hunt and Sage Davis. Since then, we have broken apart and we've all gone in our own separate directions. Lavender now works for the powwow community in the powwow circle, and Sage is working on a PhD in fashion design at the University of Minnesota. Although we still consult with each other behind the scenes. Lavender will come and she's really good at styling makeup and hair, and Sage will come and she does training and coaching for me. In November of 2018, I was approached by the Fond du Lac Band of Ojibwe to put on a fashion show that coincided with Native American Month.
Well, it's time to introduce Delina White and IAmAnishinaabe. I hope you enjoy the show, everybody.
When I do fashion shows, I like to educate the public about the historical styles, the indigenous materials, and the work and the clothing and the apparel that Native Americans wore throughout the centuries. The first model that came out on stage at the Black Bear Casino is Gail Pruden, and Gail is a two-spirit. And I use the image of Weehwa, who is a Zuni Native person and the most famous two-spirit Native person in the world. And through that image, I was able to bring Gail out and show the traditional style of our fashions using a Métis sash that is traditionally worn by men around the waist, but I had it on Gail across her body, which was traditionally worn in that fashion with Métis women. One of the main components of my fashion show is to bring an education to the public about Native American history, our culture, our wonderful designs through our indigenous art. So I am able to do that by putting together apparel that shows our creations throughout the beginning of time, throughout history. And it depicts different time periods about when materials became available to us in the Great Lakes area. So as one example of providing some information and education to the audience, I included velvets, and velvets are shown a couple different ways in this particular fashion show. And velvet arrived in the Great Lakes around the 1700s, and it made its way through the United States. And when it reached each native nation, then it became a part of that nation. So the designs and the styles that were used for the velvet was different depending upon which nation you were from. So the Victorian era was a time period when the fashions were very elaborate and the fabrics were richly decorated. So to show an example about what natives looked like in that era, I created a Victorian skirt that Rebecca's wearing. And it is dark and edgy, it's gothic, it has like a modern day tattoo type of a culture to it. And it also has the applique and the symbolism of the Great Lakes and the woodlands. As an example of how natives live in two worlds, Lavender created an urban vibe skirt with the slit that came really high, and it goes to show how natives live in two worlds, how they can live with an applique style traditional, and then how to wear it in today's urban vibe and modern environment. Natives have always dressed nice and loved to show their culture through their style and to show how beautiful that our culture is, and to show respect for the person that they were going to be visiting or meeting, or if they were going to go to town, they wanted to represent themselves in a cultural way. And this is true for the men as well. So in this particular suit, Dustin is showing how you can wear a traditional apron along with a ribbon shirt and look really dressed up and nice for any type of a formal occasion. So Mariah's skirt has an example of ribbon work. So it's really important to include those antique aspects that are considered cultural in the Native community. So this is a fine example of ribbons and using ribbons on our ribbon skirts. Another example of the traditional applique in a contemporary style is the skirt that Lavender made for Snowy. The fabric she used is absolutely contemporary, where it is a latex spandex with a black mesh over it, and it's very blingy. It has a lot of sequins, so when it's on stage or when it's in an environment where there's a lot of lights, it just looks like a lot of camera lights flashing. In the 1750s, the applique process became available to Native women. So they would take fabric and they would cut it and they would fold it and then sew it down to create really interesting fabrics, layering one fabric on top of the other in contrasting colors so that the colors would really pop and the design would really be very interesting. So Corey Medina, one of our models, is showing a vest and how this process was done. And his particular vest has a military style to it, and he just looks super, super awesome in it. The Thunderbird is a spiritual symbol to Native people, and it has a lot of power, and we want to recognize the Thunderbird as being associated with the Anishinaabe people. Elena is wearing a skirt that is a combination of one of the scarves that I had created from my own beadwork, in combination with silk fabric and gold and red sequins. So I combined it together to be really traditional and to have a great amount of movement. I want to bring out lavender in all of our models for our final grand exit, and we'll give everyone an opportunity to meet the models and take photographs. We'll have one last song, which is Corey Medina, who's one of our models. So after every fashion show, we have a meet and greet where we have the audience and the press meet the models and can talk to myself. They have an opportunity to see up close and personal the fabrics and all the details and ask questions. I had been planning for 2 years on putting together a two-spirit fashion show at the Walker Art Center. So immediately after Black Bear, I began to put together the production for the Walker Art Center two-spirit fashion show, and it was called Indigenous Spirit Gender Fluid Fashion. As a fashion designer and being in the public eye, I have an opportunity to bring awareness about some of the issues that's affecting Native people in Indian country. One of my missions is to bring awareness about two spirits and to recognize, to accept, and include them in all aspects of our community. And that's why it's important to include androgynous clothing in my fashions. So in the traditional Native American and Anishinaabe culture and all Native cultures throughout the United States and Canada, two-spiritism has always been accepted. So as part of the family, the important thing was contributing to the family as best as you could. So if you had dexterity in your fingers, then you could do beadwork. If you were strong, then you could haul wood and do some of the harder, more difficult tasks that needed to be accomplished. There was no negative feelings toward anybody within our community. And so as IAmAnishinaabe, I believe that it's important to make people feel welcome and to feel comfortable and to feel beautiful. So I create clothing for every individual in our community. So in this particular fashion show at the Walker Art Center, I did a video model call through Facebook. And I received many, many applications. And so from there, it was very, very difficult to whittle it down to just 10 models. As a designer, I like to make what I think would look beautiful on a particular model. And the model doesn't necessarily have to like what it is that they're wearing. They need to be able to show it as if they love it. But that's their job. So when I see models that I like to accentuate specific characteristics about a model. And so for this particular model, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to look through my fabric and see what it is that I have. So I pulled out this fabric and it immediately connected to a particular model. And the model at the time, I called him the color of butter. And he just has a beautiful, greenish color eyes, and the photographs that he had sent me, he had like a caramel color hair. And of course he had colored it, And then when I seen him on Facebook, I seen that his natural hair color was coming out again, which was a lot darker. And so I contacted him and I'm like, hey, can you go back to being caramel blonde? Because I'm matching you up with this particular fabric. And he's like, oh, sure, of course, whatever it is that you'd like me to do. So I immediately knew what it was that I wanted to do because of this particular fabric. It's woven and it's an upholstery fabric and it looks like a woven basket. And from there I had remembered some of the historic photographs I had seen of the weaving that my people do. In their weaving, they make certain patterns and certain designs using different color grasses, like the light grasses, the medium colored grasses, and then some of the darker grasses. And so what I had envisioned was a particular pattern where they have people, images of people as a row, and they look like they're holding hands. And so I made this vest with that design in mind. And then I used hand-tanned smoked hide to make the design. And I used like a cotton ribbon. So I wanted to emulate that same woven cotton ribbon from the vest onto this. So that's why I decided to use cotton ribbons to embellish this, and then to do the sequin work that's on the vest, to repeat it on the skirt too, so that they're coordinated. See how the sequins are the same? These ones are a little bit larger because the space that it's got to occupy, you've got to be able to see it from a distance. And if I used a smaller sequin, it would just kind of get lost on the fabric, on the space. So the sequins are the same materials, and I think it's the brass and copper mix. And this particular sequin is a little bit bigger. So this is the vest that I had imagined would be coordinated with this skirt. So I used the hand-tanned leather, and it smells really good because it's a smoke hide. And then I used the woven cotton ribbon, which I'm going to use not the same ribbon, but a similar ribbon of the same material and a similar color, like this. So this is where we're at so far. And I think that's a lot. So this particular model, Neben, sent a photograph of himself, and I was so impressed. As soon as I seen him, I knew which fabric I wanted to use and the color combinations that would look best on Neben. Put a traditional basket design on there where we have continual people in a row, and if it's a basket, then it encircles the basket. So it looks like people holding hands, and sometimes they're women, and sometimes they're men, and sometimes they're a combination of both. But I thought it would be really nice to have men holding hands so that the two-spirit concept was very obvious. I approached the Walker Art Center, and I made a meeting, and I met with Jackie Stallman, who bought me coffee, and we discussed things that I wanted to do. And I told Jackie that I had a dream of having a fashion show at the Walker Art Center. And Jackie since then has worked closely with me for 2 years in developing the show and creating the perfect ambiance and the perfect production and putting together the crew and the stylist, the photographer, videographer, the space. Everything was so exciting, and they were so gracious and great to work with. As a part of Walker Art Center's documentation, they created a photo shoot for a couple of our special looks that we wanted to be sure to highlight and show on the electronic website.
This is on backwards too. It needs to go like that. Okay, Jackie, I wonder if you can help me for a second. Good. Does that feel good? Yeah. Okay, we got a little tail that, yeah. Work with it. We're gonna leave it long for now, and then. All right, you're ready.
So I selected 3 of our looks, and one look was Neben. And Neben did such an amazing job with the use of his body and just really showing a lot of shape and interesting movements to show the dexterity of the outfit that he was wearing. So a lot of people don't know all of the work that goes on in producing a fashion show. So there's the venue that has to be spectacular and to be able to carry a lot of people in its space. So I had done several photo shoots on the terraces on the outside of the Walker Art Center, and I was really excited when Jackie said that that's where the show would be.
You ready to see some gender fluid fashion? Please give it up for the incredible Delina White, everybody.
The weather was perfect in June, so it was a beautiful summer day, and we wanted to take advantage of the outdoor area, so we had the fashion show on the outdoor terraces.
Miigwech Gije Manidu for giving us such a wonderful day to be out on the terrace.
Juliana Enright, whose stage name is Bleak Roses, was the DJ. Xochi de la Luna was the co-host, along with Ondine, the Siren Queen. The crowd was so wonderful. They were excited, they were encouraging, they were happy and celebratory. They were so responsive and excited to see us and be a part of the show. Geo Neptune is a basket artist. They are Passamaquoddy from the state of Maine. So Geo, they wore a creation that is entirely created by myself. I made the beadwork, I photographed the beadwork, I worked with the images on the computer and was able to put it in parameters so that I could send it to a manufacturer, have it digitally printed, made into fabric, and then designed into clothing. And so this was very original, and Geo was able to show my next and upcoming line that I want the world to see. Rebecca has modeled for me a couple times. She was in the Black Bear Casino show showing the Victorian skirt, and she modeled the red rose skirt at the Walker Art Center. Rebecca is a real showstopper. She comes out and her energy is just magnificent. She's so beautiful and just really gets the audience excited and all revved up. Darcy is wearing a mesh skirt with the traditional ribbons and traditional embossed blue flowers, and underneath it she's got just layers and layers of tulle that causes the skirt to puff out, and she really shows the beautifulness about the skirt maintaining its state while she's dancing and having a really good time on the runway. So Orion has a beautiful, demure and quiet sense about her, and I could feel that in the photographs that she had submitted. And I knew right away that I needed Orion to show a traditional Ho-Chunk style top and skirt. It has the traditional silver ring brooches. It has a traditional Italian flock taffeta again, and it has the floral embellishments in it that is significant to the woodland people. And then there's Cecilia, who's wearing her traditional men's woodland suit. Neben's energy on the runway was over the top. It was so beautiful, and he was able to show the look in a very beautiful, majestic way using his eagle tail fan as well. I have always wanted to show at the Walker Art Center because it's so internationally well known, and it's a beautiful and amazing space. Showing my designs at the Walker Art Center was a dream come true.
Thank you for watching. Join us again next season on Common Ground. If you have an idea for Common Ground in North Central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call 218-333-3014. To watch Common Ground online, visit lptv.org and click local shows. Episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Production funding of Common Ground was made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money by the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at lptv.org.